خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين على أمور الدنيا والدين، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Before anything else, I would wish to remind you and myself to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than anything else and before everything else. To fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah to whom the seven heavens and the earth and all that's in between and every creature that's in between these areas, the Allah that every one of these things bow down to and prostrate to. تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن ومن شيء, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there is nothing, ومن شيء, there is no creature on the face of this earth إلا يسبح بحمده, except that it makes tasbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that Allah is the one that we all have to fear and respect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who deals with the affairs of everybody in the whole world. You know, if everybody in the universe started talking one time, at the same time, and everybody started asking, every and each person asked for something different, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to hear every one of them and respond to every one of them. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If everybody, 6 billion people on earth, everybody started talking at the same time, and everybody asked for a different thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is well able to hear every one of them and respond to every one of them and give them what they need. So once again, I remind you and myself to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Allah, the Lord of the universe. I'm going to start with the hadith, and inshallah ta'ala after that you guys will, get an idea of what it is that I wish to talk about here tonight. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a hadith, I'm going to recite this in Arabic, inshallah ta'ala, go little by little. He says, يُجَاءُ بِنُوحٍ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam is going to be brought forth on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam being the first of messengers who was sent to an actual people. Adam alayhi salam during his time was a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there was nobody on earth. So giving da'wah outside of his family was not wajib, nor was it an obligation upon Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. But Nuh alayhi salam was the first of messengers to actually go to some people and tell them, hey, listen folks, you have to fear Allah, you have to pray, you have to do this, you have to do that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا 50 عَامًا فَأَخَذَهُمُ الطُّوفَانُ. Right? We had sent further Nuh to his people, and he stayed with them for 950 long years. 950 long years. So the hadith says, يُجَاءُ بِنُوحٍ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, Nuh is going to be brought forth on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah. وَيُقَالُ لَهُ, and it will be said to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this to Nuh alayhi salam, هَلْ بَلَّغْتَ, did you convey what I told you to convey to the people? فَيَقُولُ, he will say, نَعَمْ يَا رَبْ, yes, O Allah. فَتُسْأَلُ أُمَّتُهُ, and his nation will be asked. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now turns from Nuh alayhi salam to his people, and he asks them, هَلْ بَلَّغَكُمْ, did he convey unto you what he was supposed to? فَيَقُولُونَ, and look at what they say. They said, مَا جَاءَنَا مِن نَذِيرٍ, nobody ever came to us. Is Nuh lying, or are they lying? This is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deal with. He asked Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, did you convey? He said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. He had asked the people, he said, did Nuh tell you guys what I told him to tell you? They said, مَا جَاءَنَا مِن نَذِيرٍ, no warner, nobody ever came to us, talking to us about any of the things that you're talking about, subhanAllah. فَيَقُولُ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would look at Nuh, turn back to Nuh once again, and he will ask him, مَنْ شَهُودُكَ, who are your witnesses? You're telling me that you had conveyed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this a lot more than Nuh and his people. Right? It says, Nuh, your people are saying that you have not told them anything. Who are your witnesses? Now, common sense, think about this. Nuh alayhi salam, his time was a very, very, very long time ago. the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last of nations, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last of messengers and prophets. So if you were to use your mind for a little bit, and if you had to guess who Nuh alayhi salam would call as a witness, who would you say? Someone close to his time or area, right? Right? Maybe the prophet that came after Nuh, maybe the one that came after that, maybe the one that came after that. But all of these people, we're talking about bypassing thousands of years, right? He says Muhammad wa ummatuhu. SubhanAllah. He says Muhammad and his nation and his people are my witnesses that I conveyed your message, O Allah, to his people. Look, bypassing thousands of years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, Man shahuduk, who are your witnesses? He says Muhammad wa ummatuhu, Muhammad and his nation and his people are my witnesses. فَيُجَاءُ بِكُمْ, then Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, you all, the people of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will be brought forth. فَتَشْهَدُونَ, and you will bear witness that Nuh indeed conveyed the message to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My point, and then after that, ثُمَّ قَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم, after that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam recites the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Thus we have made you into a nation that's moderate, that's right in between the two extremes. My point in this hadith is this. This ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being so just, being so moderate, taking the golden middle path. I was talking about that on Mrs. Noor last night. Right? Them taking that concept has given them, subhanAllah, look at this, the status that a prophet who came thousands of years before them would call upon them as witnesses and bypass every nation that came between Noah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is something very amazing, folks. He could have called upon the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ishaq, Yaqub, Yahya, Zakaria, all these great prophets. Ibrahim, out of all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah openly calls him a friend of Allah. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. This is in the Quran, not from the Sunnah, and not from the saying of a scholar. But even he bypasses the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam and goes straight. He says, oh Allah, you know who my witnesses are? Muhammad wa ummatuhu. Muhammad and his nation, subhanAllah. Now, Ibn al-Qayyim, who was one of the great scholars of this ummah, once said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make any command from anyone except that Iblis, la'natullahi alayhi, has two incitements in that command. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never tell any one person, any one nation, do this, except that shaitan on one side has two incitements upon whatever the matter might be. Either negligence or exaggeration. Look at this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not command any one of us to do anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not command us. For instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to pray 5 times a day. Well, guess what? The job of Iblis la'natullahi alayhi is to tell you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to pray 5 times. Iblis' job is either to tell you, pray 2 times a day, or pray 15 times a day. See what I'm saying? Either fall short of what you're supposed to, or be extreme in what you're supposed to. SubhanAllah. So there's no command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to any one person, or any one nation for that matter, except that the job of Iblis la'natullahi alayhi is to make you do something other than that which you're supposed to do. And once again, what is this all about? This is all about moderation. This is all about following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran the way you're supposed to, is being on that path. Right? It's being on that path. So to fight against Iblis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Iblis is an enemy openly to us. So فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًا, make an enemy of him as well. Iblis, right? And so his job here is to tell you, if you were to, like I said, pray 5 times a day, his job is to tell you, you know what? This is not enough to take you to paradise. And after all, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala go with 5? I mean, what's up with that number? Why can't it be 6? I like the number 6. You know, he plays with your mind and says that you go, oh my God, that's my favorite number, 6. Who cares about your favorite number? Right? Or he tells you 5 is nothing. 5 is nothing, you're a very bad person. 2 weeks ago you punched someone in the eyes. A week before that you had hit someone. You are going to hellfire. You need to do 15. And you deal with this as if it's wajib. Now for someone to pray more than 5 times a day, it's not wrong, given that it's voluntary prayers. But for you to view whatever salah that you perform outside of this 5 as wajib is what becomes haram. Right? There's a very, very big difference between the 5 salawats and the other prayers that we do. Right? And so Ibn al-Qayyim once again tells us there's no command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands a person, except that Iblis has this 2 incitements towards the person. He either tells him, oh, that's too much, you're a good person, or it's too little, you need to do more than this. Now, you know, it's said, there's a very famous quote that says, virtue is being moderate between 2 vices. This is true in one way, and it could not be true if you look at it from another standpoint. It's true because, quite honestly, for you to realize, I know the right from the wrong, or what's right from many things, it's quite easy. Saying this last night, if someone is telling you, oh my God, the people in Columbus are the best people in the world, every one of them is an angel. Every one of them is just so good, and they are so nice, and oh my God. And the other person is telling you, every one of them is just evil. They all need to be killed. For you to find out the truth is quite easy. You kind of go right in between the two. Between the 2 extremes is always where the truth is at. So somebody told me everybody in Columbus is a loser. And somebody told me everybody in Columbus is an angel. I know the truth is right in between. There are some here, there are some there. It's quite easy. But now again, you have to think about which you use as a standard to measure what's good and what's bad. Declaring an act good or bad is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what led to, even if you go outside of Islam for a little bit, this is what led to that famous philosopher, Aristotle. He said that to discover the moderate of everything is hard. He said the hardest thing in life is for you to discover the moderate position of anything in life. So what do they used to call him? The prince of philosophy. Right? Aristotle. And so a non-Muslim, nonetheless educated, right, tells us, or tells his people, or wherever, right, that hey, to find the middle path of anything is hard because, you know, just like beauty and excellence, all these things are in the eyes of the beholder, unless the standard that you're using to measure this up is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because then it's out of your eyes and what you think and what your eyes say and what your mind says. This is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said this is good, then that must be good. Right? So, what's good and what's bad, the virtue and the vice, always have to originate, the way you look at them must come from the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at them. Because what's good to me is definitely not good to a lot of people I know. A lot of my friends. I don't like what I like to do. And I don't like a lot of what my friends like to do. Common sense. Right? But again, if the thing stems out of the Sharia, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the standard, right, then there would be no problems. Just for instance, a lot of times in the world we hear about Muslims oppressing ladies and, you know, they don't give them their rights. And I'm not going to tell you that. I mean, y'all hear that every day, right, in the media. The problem is this. The problem is that the female in these days, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had set a standard for her to measure herself up to, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had set a number of rules and regulations for her to follow. But the problem comes in when the lady says, my standard is going to be a man. And this is why we have all the problems regarding ladies and human rights and feminism and all that good stuff. Because, and this is lowering yourself. Imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had placed you up here, how dare you bring yourself down and talk about, if John can do this, I will do this. Right? So it's about having a standard by which everything that you want to do stems out of. It really has nothing to do with Muslims being good people or bad people, or ladies being treated nice in the West or in the East or in the South. No, it has nothing to do with this. It has to do with what you use as a standard in your life. Right? If a lady looks at a man and she says, if Ahmed cuts his hair this way, I should be able to do the same. We have a major problem. That lady has some issues. Right? If the opposite is true, of course. If I said I'm going to do what a lady does, if she wears a big dress, I'm going to wear a big dress. I have some major issues myself. Right? So it's all about having a standard by which you look at yourself and say, oh my God, you know what, this is good, but this is good because I'm looking at it from here. And that here has to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Sharia of Islam. Now, forget about being harsh to other people or even to members of our own family. But even being harsh upon ourselves, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaks about that quite openly. In one hadith he says, لا تشددوا على أنفسكم, do not be harsh and hard upon yourselves. فَيُشَدَّدَ عَلَيْكُمْ, because then if you do so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be hard and harsh upon you. Right? Do not be hard upon yourselves. Because when that happens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is an invitation for Allah to be harsh and hard upon you. فَإِنَّ قَوْمًا, because a nation in the past, look at this, the Prophet ﷺ saying this, a nation in the past, شَدَّدُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, were very hard upon themselves. فَشَدَّدَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, and Allah, as a result, became hard and harsh upon them. A nation in the past has done this. They were being harsh and hard upon themselves and their families and their friends and everybody else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did just what they have done to themselves. So look, not even other people, not even dealing with other people. We're talking about dealing with yourself. With yourself. And this is the beauty of Islam and the Sharia. Is that not only does it watch out for your interaction with others and justice in the way you deal with others, but justice upon yourself and the way you deal with yourself. Right? This is something that you will not find nowhere else. Also, if you look at the very base and the foundation of this Deen, right, you will see that it's honestly based on nothing but the hadith that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha had reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when she said, if the Prophet ﷺ was to pick between two things, he would always go with the easier of the two, given that it wasn't haram, given that what he was about to pick was not against Islam or the Sharia. But if you were to look at this Deen altogether, and Muhammad ﷺ, and our commitment to Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, you will see that, quite honestly, it's all based on this concept of being easy upon ourselves. Look at this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the mu'mineen, the believers. He tells them, الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيَّ. Right? Those who follow the messenger, the prophet of Allah, al-Ummiyya, the unlettered, the illiterate. Now, common sense is such that when we want to follow somebody, when we want to elect somebody as a leader, as a president, or whatever else, common sense tells you these days, and this has been from the day of the start of humanity, has been that we always look for attributes, good attributes in a person that attracts us, and then we say, oh my God, you know what, I think he's good, I'm going to elect him. Right? But for an entire Deen to be led by someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states openly right here, Al-Rasul, a messenger, meaning that a book was given to him, and Nabi, a prophet. A prophet could be anyone, whether or not a book is given or not. Al-Ummi, unlettered, does not know how to read, does not know how to write. Right? What does this tell you? It tells you that people could be the best of people in the world and not know how to read and write. Right? It tells you that people could be the best servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just because someone does not know how to read and write, you don't say, oh my, you know what, you're a pretty dumb, I'm going to go with James here. Because if this is the case, then what would the case be with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Right? And look at this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on and He says, الَّذِينَ يَجِدُونَهُ مَكْتُوبًا. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom you will find written in عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل, in the Gospel and the Torah. Right? You will find stated in the Torah and the Gospel that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just not going to be a prophet, but Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is unlettered, he is illiterate, he does not read, he does not write. So if you're willing to commit yourself to somebody, knowing that he does not read and write, what does it tell you? It just told you that you're going to go with the easier of things in life. And instead of saying, I'm going to wait, do you have a master's degree? What's your experience with working with other people? If we make you a king, how would you deal with our money? All that stuff. You could ask all this. And it's not wrong, by the way, if you have requirements for a person. But it's just to tell you that Islam always goes with the easier of the two. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of us, the best of humanity, khayru khalqillah, right, was unlettered. And not only that, it was stated in the Gospel and the Torah that Muhammad was unlettered and illiterate. So the ayah is very long. Let's come towards the very end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِهِ. Those who are believers in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَعَزَّرُوهُ وَنَصَرُوهُ, who support him and stand with him at all times. وَاتَّبِعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِ, and follow the light that was sent on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. These folks shall prosper. So prosperity, again, is connected to you taking the easier of the two things. Right? Prosperity, I think that's what everybody wants to do in the world. Every one person, white, black, American, Asian, you ask them one thing, everybody wants to thrive, everybody wants to prosper, everybody wants to live in a very peaceful environment where, his or her kids can go to school, and everybody wants that. But for that to happen for the mu'min, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّبِعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِ أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ. I'm sorry. And they go and follow the light that was sent with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What's this light? Light, when you think of something easy, you think of light, you think of, something that's not too harsh. Being hard and harsh, you associate that with darkness and so forth. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And these are going to be those who will prosper. The successful ones are going to be these folks right here. But again, we can even go around the books of the hadith and find statements from the mouth of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that without hitting the bush, hitting around the bush or anything like that, tell you straight up, don't do this, do this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in hadith, إِنَّ الدِّينَ يُسْرٌ. إِنَّ الدِّينَ يُسْرٌ. The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is easy. وَلَنْ يُشَادَّ الدِّينُ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا غَلَبَهُ. And no one makes this deen hard upon himself except that it overtakes him. Right? إِنَّ الدِّينَ يُسْرٌ. The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is easy. وَلَنْ يُشَادَّ الدِّينُ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا غَلَبَهُ. And no one makes it hard upon himself except that the deen overtakes him. And what does that mean? It does not mean that he becomes a lot more religious. No. It means that he exits the deen altogether. SubhanAllah. Because when he's always looking for something hard and harsh and extreme, and you don't find the things that you're looking for in this deen, obviously you're going to have to go outside and look for a place where you can find these things that you're looking for. Satisfaction comes always at a level where you get what you want. And so if a person is not finding the harsh mentality, right, in Islam, obviously that person will go and look for it somewhere else. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, وَلَنْ يُشَادَ الدِّينُ أَحَدٌ. No one makes this deen hard upon himself, except it overtakes him, it overburdens him. He just says, you know what, this is forget this. I'm leaving it all together. SubhanAllah. So when a person, and the same applies to a nation as well. If a nation wants to prosper, that it must take things easy upon itself. The non-Muslims are doing this quite well. As Muslims don't know why Muslims are having a hard time doing this. Right? Truth be told, non-Muslim states are prospering, advancing. Right? A Muslim is always a person who acknowledges the good of all people, Muslims and non-Muslims. So non-Muslims today are thriving, they're prospering, they're advancing, they're getting the things that they want. Right? They're leading humanity. Great mighty things are happening to them left and right. But as that's happening on one side of the world, the opposite is happening on the other side. And it makes no sense. You know why? Because they took it easy upon themselves. They did not care much for this is wrong. You're out of here. You're out of there. Salah is what? After the Shahada, the second thing that comes after that is prayer, right? What Islam is based upon. But I will show you how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for that matter, I'll show you how in Salah, which we do every day, I'll show you how the nature of it being that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the easier of many ways. We know when Salah was being obligated upon the Ummah, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the first number that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him was but 50, 50, not 5. And then every time he would come back and he would see Musa alayhi salam, and Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam would tell him every one time, go back because I know your people are not going to be able to deal with 50 prayers a day. My God, that would be every 3 minutes we would have to pray. We got some major problems doing 5. Right? Imagine we had to do 50. That's, I mean, we my God, we would have done about 5 or so right now at the time I was talking, or more. Right? So he would go back to him, right? And then at the end we know the number came down to 5. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that this is the number that I had made my decree upon. Now, here's the thing. Even though we pray 5 times a day, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the mizan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guess what? It equals 50. Even though we only pray 5 times a day. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was told about 50 to start with, he could have said, okay, you know what? This is gaining more hasanat. And the more you pray, of course, you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the hikmah and the wisdom in this is not that the more you pray, you're getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's about realizing what the needs of his people are and what they can do and what they can't do. He knew that they could not have done 50 prayers a day. Right? So even though this is a very noble act, right? Most of us, when we see something that's very good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes, we would like to do it more. Right? Even though salah is something that's great and noble in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he still went back and said, Allah, this is too much. 50 is too much. I like a little bit smaller number. Right? And it comes down to 5. And the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we pray 5 times a day, but the hasanats that you get, right, equals 50. So the things that you and I do every one day, see how ease is part of every one step that we take, every transaction of our lives. Ease, right? Going with the easier of the two. Given that it's not haram, it's in every transaction of our lives. Now, how did the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, excuse me, how did the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam deal with sinners, folks who do sinful acts? I will tell you how a lot of people deal with them these days. You know, a lot of times when someone does wrong, we're very quick into sending them outside of Islam. We're very, very quick into sending that person outside of Islam. Even if you do something very, very, very bad, no one has the right to either enter someone or exit someone outside of Islam. For as long as someone says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Nobody, not you, not me, not my cousin's cousin, nobody, has the right to exit somebody out of Islam, even if what he has done is the worst of things. Now, how does somebody exit out of this? A lot of people, they will tell you openly, and not just about even regular people, they will, say things about major scholars that you and I know, all over the world, in the Arab world, in the subcontinent, in Africa, everywhere. Oh, him, oh my God, yeah, you know what, kafir. You did that, oh, you know what, you were kafir. Openly. Openly. Now, Islam, what makes a person a Muslim? Let's look at the definition of Iman. الاعتقاد بالقلب وقول باللسان والعمل بالجوارح. These are three components of the faith of a person. الاعتقاد بالقلب, something that you're convinced. Conviction that you have deep in the bottom of your heart and soul. I believe that there's one Allah. You can't see that, but I believe that in the bottom of my heart. الاعتقاد بالقلب وقول باللسان. When I pray, I say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. What's inside me comes out in the form of words. I say praise be to Allah, the one Allah. I don't say the two Allahs, even though I believe in one. Right? And number three, وَالْعَمَلُ بِالْجَوَارِحِ, the actions that you commit, the acts that you commit. So how can someone then exit Islam? Well, very easy. What you would have to do is just undo these three things. Meaning that a person could exit Islam by a word that you said, by an action that you commit, or by something that you're holding deep in your heart. But again, who knows when that happens? If someone openly comes up to me and says, I'm not Muslim, I hate being Muslim, Allah is not, this. It's okay, well that's what you chose. You told me that you're not Muslim, right? But someone committing an act that's sinful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not justify you exiting that person outside of Islam. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, one of the noble companions of the Prophet said that a man came to the Prophet one day and he told him, Ya Rasulullah, I have done something very, very, very bad. He said, what have you done? He said, I was, standing by and this lady came and I kissed her. I don't know who she is. She's not related to me. She's not my wife. She's nobody to me. But I kissed her. What should I do? Now, a lot of the companions that were standing by there, right, wanted to start beating him up. Oh my God, you're this and that, name calling. I wouldn't be surprised if someone said, kafir. Right? Ever since when did kissing, make you a kafir? Right? And so look at the response Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave even before Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I kissed a woman, I don't know who she was just some lady, and I feel so bad, what should I do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent this ayah in Surah Hud. أَقِمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَأَقِمُ الصَّلَاةَ, and establish prayer. طَرَفَيِ النَّهَارِ, at the two ends of the day. وَزُلَفًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ, and the approaches of the night. And then look at after that. إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتَ, for the good deeds, يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, for the good deeds will wipe away and erase the bad deeds. ذَلِكَ, indeed this is ذِكْرَى, a reminder, لِلذَّاكِرِينَ, for those who want to remember. And look at this, look at the beauty of this. This man was waiting to be condemned. Right? He was waiting to be condemned. That's why he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Stone me to death. I looked at this one girl. Right? But instead of that happening, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about salah first of all. Right? Not, because look, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. What would be a hasan? Allah tells them at the beginning of the ayah, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ. There you go. Look at the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the person got so happy that he said, Oh Messenger of Allah, is this only for me? I mean, are you saying this just for me? He said, no, this is for every one person till the end of the world. Right? إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتَ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealing with sinners in that way. Oh Messenger of Allah, is this for me? Are you being too nice to me? No, son, you're not that special. Right? This is for everybody. I mean, you're special, but you're not that special. This is for everybody. Now, also, Abu Hurairah reports another hadith in which a man was brought to the Prophet. This gentleman was drunk. He had no idea what he was saying. He was just cussing at people, hitting people, and punching people in the eyes, and and they brought him over to the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look at this, tells the people, the guys, to hold him because this guy was just punching people and hitting people. And then after that, after a little while, he stopped and things kind of went down. I guess the level of alcohol or whatever went down. And then the Prophet ﷺ told him, don't ever do this again, for there's a punishment for this. And he left. Now one of the companions standing there with Muhammad ﷺ said, oh my God, disgrace be upon him. What a disgraceful God. Look at the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He tells him, لا تقولوا هكذا. Do not say that, right? وَلَا تَعِينُوا عَلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not help shaitan against him. Sinful, I mean, this is a guy who was drunk, hitting people, killing people, smashing people's eyes and taking their shirts. Right? And as he was about to go home, somebody said, my God, that dude is just plain weird. Disgrace. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says, no, shaitan had told him to do this, so don't take the side of this against your own brother. What does it tell you? That you committing this act does not put you outside of Islam. Ma'siyah is a sinful act. Kufr is much higher than that. You can be a Muslim and commit a ma'siyah. And it's much better that way. To not be a Muslim and commit a sinful act is much worse than being a Muslim and committing a sinful act. I'm not calling you all people to do bad things. Don't get me wrong. But for a person to be a Muslim and commit a ma'siyah is much better than for that person to not be a Muslim, because you have two strikes right there. The kalima la ilaha illallah alone can do things that are great. That one statement alone will find you a place high in the gardens of the Firdaus. Even though you have never prayed, you never paid zakat, you were never nice to anybody. That kalima alone. And so when you send somebody outside of Islam left and right, like you were told to do this, you are violating this kalima. And that kalima, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, will come up on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah and stand in front of you and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for justice between you and it. Right? Allah, people who are believers in me, who say la ilaha illallah, this gentleman right here, he's telling that they were not Muslims, they were munafiqeen, they were mushrikeen. Things that are very, very common in our tongues these days. Right? So subhanAllah, the Prophet says, don't take the side of shaitan against your own brother. لَا تَعِينُوا عَلَيْهِ شَيْطَانِ. Look at this. Also, we know that the Prophet was sent with mercy as a source of guidance to all of humanity. But also the Prophet tells us in a hadith what he was sent for as well. You know, mercy, guidance, and so forth. But look at this hadith. A companion by the name Jabir ibn Abdullah says that the Prophet said, Inna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lam yab'athni mu'annatan aw muta'annatan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not set me forth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not bring me forth, right, as someone hard, or muta'annatan, someone who looks at the downfalls and the shortcomings of people. Right? This is Prophet saying this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send me to this ummah as a person who is going to be hard and harsh upon them, or a person who's going to look at the downfalls and the little mistakes of people. وَلَكِنْ يَبْعَثْنِي. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent me forth mu'allaman, as a teacher, to teach people the right from the wrong. Right? مُيَسَّرًا, in a very easy way and manner. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send me to this ummah as a person who's going to be hard upon them, number one. And number two, as a person who's going to look at their shortcomings and downfalls. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent me as a teacher, mu'allaman, muyassaran, as a teacher who's going to be easy upon every one of them. SubhanAllah. And so, every one thing that the Prophet Muhammad has done, every one thing that we know from the Salaf, the generations, the great generations that came after him, had placed one thing over everything else. In all of their steps, all of their transactions, one thing was supreme above everything else. And this was kindness and being gentle. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, إِنَّ الرَّفْقَ gentleness لَا يَكُونُ فِي شَيْءٍ إِلَّا زَانِهِ is not in something except it makes it more beautiful. If you're gentle, right, you as a person will be a very beautiful person in the inside force. Right? So gentleness is not in something except that it makes it beautiful. وَلَا يَنْزَعُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا شَانَهُ and it's not missing from someone or something except that it makes it look ugly and then unwanted. Right? Kindness and being gentle, right, is not in something but that it makes it beautiful. It's not in someone but that it makes him or her a beautiful person. And it's not missing from something or someone except that it makes him or it, right, unwanted. Not so pleasant, subhanAllah. And so, you know, this leads me to a story that I read. I might have told some of you guys a story that I read about 3 months ago, maybe a little bit. Yeah, about 3 months ago. On the dispatch. The story was about, you know, since we're talking about gentleness and so forth. The story was about a young boy. His name was Tom, and he had a brother. His brother's name was John. Back in the summer of 1980, 27 years ago, they were riding a dirt bike. And after a little bit, they only had one helmet, so John was the older of the two. He gave the helmet to his younger brother, Tom, who was only 14 years old at the time. John was 16, Tom was 14. So they're riding around, and they crash. John wasn't wearing a helmet because he gave it to his younger brother, so he instantly died. Tom, 14 years old, fell in a coma. Back in the summer of 1980. Okay, not 2006, 1980. They took him to the hospital, and this had happened here in Columbus. They took him to the hospital, and the doctor said, okay, well, ma'am, Tom, your son will die in just 3 days. She said, okay. 3 days came by, and he was still there. 10 days came by, he was still alive. 25 days came by, he was around. A month came by, he was still around. Nothing had changed. Still in coma. After a month, she said, you know what? I'll just take him back to my house. If he dies there. If he stays alive there. But it's too hard for me to be with my son here at the hospital. Back in 1980, 14 years old, everybody said he was going to die in 3 days at the age of 14. Anyone guess when Tom had passed away? May of 2006. May of 2006. 26 years after everybody said he would die. SubhanAllah. Tom passed away at the age of 39. And everybody said he was going to die at 14. 14 and 39 years old. And what had, honestly, what broke my heart was not even that. I mean, that's something very amazing, subhanAllah, 26 years, you know, in coma the whole time. The whole time. And since we're talking about being gentle, you know, the one thing that just broke me up, tore me up, is how kind and gentle this mother was to her son. And, you know, I just couldn't think about all the things my mother has done, perhaps, that I'm not aware of. Right? They said